Hi, Chris.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. We have a lot going on in the studio right now, but, President's approval rating hovering around 40%, not far from the lowest point of his presidency. What, if anything, can he say? I mean, I was thinking about this before you came on air with us. What in the world is the point of the State of the Union address in 2023?
Well, I mean, don't get me started. The State of the Union address has a history of connected to this. It is the best possible platform to launch a re-election campaign. The birth of the primetime televised State of the Union address was 1964. Lyndon Johnson, who had inherited the presidency after the assassination of JFK, used it as the biggest, best possible stage to speak to the American people and validate his run for re-election. And I can tell you, if you've ever been in the room, when it's all lit, it is amazing. And there's applause and there's the roadblock coverage and everybody's watching. So the point of the State of the Union is that once a year, the president gets a freebie. And the question for Biden is, what's he going to do with it?
Right. What is he going to do with it? We kept on talking about these numbers this week about the Washington Post poll. It finds 4 in 10 Americans say they're worse off financially since he moved to the White House. And I know economy is something that he's expected to tout in terms of there are more jobs. Inflation is down, even though it's still high. But really, can he really make that case and not be considered in some ways contradicting the data that we know that shows that just because we have more jobs doesn't mean that more people are working in them, and just because inflation is down doesn't mean that more people aren't struggling?
Well, right. Look, the president is doing better with voters than he was before. He's been on actually a little bit of an uptick lately in the polls. But if you're going from 39% to 45% or 44%, you're still way underwater, and that's not where he wants to be. But the national mood, though sour, is improving according to polls. Things are a little better. But again, this is from a low baseline. I love that the White House wants to tout all the millions of jobs that they created. You know what created those jobs? The end of the pandemic that destroyed those jobs. So people still don't feel like they're back to scratch. Good economic news like the great jobs numbers from last week, decreases in inflation, all of those things are good things, but we're still not whole. We're not back to where we were. Voters know that, and Biden has to try to balance a little bit of realism with the idea that things are getting better and try to take some credit for it.
Do you think that he can actually bring that balance of realism? I mean, people are so skeptical today, and they're much more informed. They can go online and they can search all of this and know exactly what you're saying, is that just because we're getting a rebound doesn't mean that we're getting a reset.
That's a very, very good way to say it. And while it is true that people have more information, I don't know that they're better informed. There's a lot of competing, contradictory information out there. Biden has 3 audiences, right? He has his own party. He wants to push back against the possibility of a primary challenge from his own party. Looking at you, Elizabeth Warren. He has Republicans that he wants to demonstrate to Democrats he's taking a tough line with and doing those things. Who's the crucial group of voters? Those independents out there and persuadable Republicans who are looking at him and saying, make the case for why we should keep going with you. You may have been an answer when Donald Trump was running, but are you the answer in an open field? And that's what Biden has to start to try to do tonight. It's a long push, but don't ever underestimate the power of incumbency.
All right. Incumbency, yes. Certainly the term lesser evil comes up when we talk about incumbency as well. Chris Stirewalt, thank you as always. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.